Hello! It is the end of February, and so it is time to do a monthly wrap-up of what I've read. Hi there, I'm Beth. This is Read Remark. This is my February wrap-up of the books that I have read this month. So let's get right into it. The first book I'm going to talk about today is called Stephen Florida. This is a book by Gabe Habash. It's his debut novel. Now, it's really interesting that this book has gotten some very varied reviews. People seem to either love it or hate it. I am one of the people who absolutely loved it. Loved it. It follows a wrestler named Stephen. He is in college. His main focus in life is to win a Division IV championship in wrestling. He follows this goal with a passion and vehemence that is single-focused, narrow-minded, kind of to the point of being malevolent and people-hating. Now, it reminds me of a lot of those obsession-based movies that I've watched, such as The Wrestler, or such as Black Swan, or such as Whiplash. All of those movies are really, really brilliant in showing these people who are good at their crafts, and they follow them with this single-minded focus and intensity that drowns out everything else around them. All they are is that talent. As they soar to greater and greater heights with their craft, they are sinking to lower and lower depths in their personal lives. It's kind of like that push-pull thing. You know that they have the opportunity to achieve greatness, but at the same time it's going to come at the expense of their personhood. So even though Stephen Florida isn't necessarily reaching the same soaring heights, he's not this prima ballerina. When college is over, wrestling is probably going to be over for him as well. He's not really going to have much excuse or time or anything to be on the mat after that. But it's something that he has so much narrow-minded focus and passion for. Now it leads to kind of another question of what's going to happen to Stephen Florida after the book. It's a question that is still unanswered for me. So here's some of the setbacks or qualms that other people had with it, and it is Stephen Florida himself. He is such an unlikable character, which for me is why I loved the book so much and give it 5 stars. Yes, 5 stars. I have a real soft spot for characters who are incredibly flawed, and Stephen Florida is definitely incredibly flawed. It's a fascinating character study for me. Just know going in that you're going to be spending 300 or so pages with a character that you hate. The next book I read is Station 11. I give this one 3 stars. Station 11 actually won the Tournament of Books, a competition put on by the Morning News a couple years ago. And so going into it, I thought it was going to be a really good book. It looks at what happens after the apocalypse. Now, books about the apocalypse are fascinating to me because of the world building. I love seeing what happens when everything comes crumbling down and what is built on top of that afterwards. The world building in Station 11 was indeed very, very good. Here's the problem for me. The people that it followed, I didn't really follow my choice of character. In the beginning, we follow this character named Jeevan, who is getting everything ready for himself and his brother for this apocalypse that he sees coming. And then the apocalypse happens, and we leave off from him and follow a roaming band of Shakespearean play actors and musicians. While that was a novel concept, get it, novel concept, it's not really my choice of characters that I would have wanted to follow. I wanted so desperately to go back to Jeevan, and then we don't even go back to him until much, much later in the book. And it's many, many years later, and he's built this entire life for himself after the apocalypse that I didn't get to be part of. So for me, that kind of took the book down a little bit because I was more fascinated in that character's arc. But I will say it's still a good book, really good world building, because of course we're always seemingly so close to ruining it all. Next, I read The Wife Between Us. I filmed a video review of this book and would recommend that you go check that out for my full thoughts on it. This one gets 3 stars from me. It's a thriller. It follows a woman named Nellie and a woman named Vanessa. Both of them are in love with the same man. Nellie is the young, pretty thing. Vanessa is the embittered ex-wife who seems to be unhinged and could be a threat to Nellie. Nellie is already nervous to begin with, and so when this drama starts, we see her become increasingly nervous as her wedding date to Richard grows closer and closer. Now, it was an interesting concept. I liked the book. I like thrillers, and it kept my interest throughout the book. However, it had a little bit too many twists and turns going on to the point that it was a little bit annoying and it took away from the story. It became more of a platform for how twisty can we make this, as opposed to just a platform for a darn good story. So you can catch my full thoughts on my video. It's good. I still recommend that people who like thrillers can check it out, but it won't be your favorite. Sorry. Next is going to be a list of books that I read for Black History Month. Again, I filmed a video for this, so I would recommend that you check that out. I recommended books across all genres that I could think of by African American authors that I would recommend that you go and read, not just because of their race, but because they are just really, really good authors, and any chance that I get to recognize them is definitely one worth celebrating. One book in particular from that list that I'm going to talk about again and recommend again is Homegoing by Yajiasi. That book is just so good. I've recommended it to several friends, several coworkers, and everyone who's read it has loved it. Homegoing follows 2 sisters who are separated at birth, and then it follows all the generations that come afterwards. We only see glimpses of each of those people's lives, to the point that the refrain I heard from everyone was that we wanted to spend more time with those people. Each one of those generations that came from those 2 sisters could have gotten an entire book in their own rights. But I think there's some poetry to what Yajiasi did with that, in that it left us wanting more. It only gave us a taste, and within that taste there were the full flavors of heartache, of the heart soaring, of missed opportunities, of grievous injustices. We only got a taste, but it was enough that each one was like an entire entree unto itself. I don't know why and where I came up with this whole food metaphor, but there you go. It's mighty tasty. Next is The Flight Attendant by Chris Bojalian. Chris Bojalian is a favorite author of mine. I've read many books by him, including The Sleepwalker, Midwives. That might be the one that you're familiar with if you were well, maybe not. Maybe I'm aging myself. But if you were familiar with Oprah's book club back in her heyday when she had her talk show going on, that was one of the featured books. He also writes The Guest Room. All of the books that I've read by him are so good and so immersive. The Flight Attendant follows a woman who is hard partying, hard drinking. We begin the book with her hard partying ways catching up to her. She wakes up and next to her in bed is a dead man. He is dead and bloody. Now, she had blacked out the night before, and so she is not quite sure, did I kill this guy? I don't know. Takes off, and then we spend the rest of the book trying to figure out if she did it and what happens from there. Now, I was a little bit nervous for Chris Bojalian because he kind of put the climax at the beginning of the book. I wasn't quite sure how he was going to be able to keep that up through the rest of the book. But he did. He did, and it was so interesting, and in true Chris Bojalian fashion, it was totally immersive. Another 5-star review for The Flight Attendant. The next book I read was The Watsons Go to Birmingham. I actually read this at the request of my kid, who read it in his class. It's a children's book, but it is definite recommended reading for adults. In this book, a kid named Kenny has an older brother who is just up to no good. He runs with the wrong crowd, he's getting into the wrong kinds of things, and so the family packs up the station wagon and goes to Birmingham, Alabama to stay with Grandma. The year is 1963. They leave this sort of insular community as African Americans and go into this community where there's open hate, derision, and prejudice. And then the church bombing happens and the little girls die. And we get to see the reaction through this little boy Kenny's eyes, that he just can't believe that there would be that much hate in the world. It really got me right in the soul. It's a good book. I read it for Black History Month, but really any time of the year is a good time to read The Watsons Go to Birmingham. Yet another 5-star review. It's kind of interesting. I'm not very generous with my 5-star reviews. I only give them if the book really blows me away. So it kind of shows that February was a really great reading month for me, that I am having so many 5-star reviews. And that streak is going to continue with this next book, So Much Blue by Percival Everett, which also is a rousing 5-star read for me. Now, this is another book that follows another highly imperfect man through life. Actually, we're looking at 3 different periods of his life. Now, as I was reading this book, and it kept switching between these 3 stories, I felt kind of disconnected for a while. I wasn't sure if it was really going to lead up to anything. I thought that while the stories were kind of interesting, it was a little bit disjointed. But then they came together. They came together. I talked about this a little bit in my Black History Month video, but it's very much like an abstract painting. So you see all the different shapes and swirls and blobs of paint, and at first it looks like there's no rhyme or reason to it, and then all of a sudden you see the work as a whole, and it's this beautiful, wonderful masterpiece. And so his imperfections suddenly become a lot more vivid and beautiful and not at all forgivable. It's not that he's completely redeemed by this. It also made me think of Picasso. Picasso had this blue period for some time, whereas his was over within a matter of a few years. I feel like the main character in So Much Blue has been having this ongoing blue period his entire adult life. And honestly, it's really hard for me to do it justice explaining it. Just think of the book like a picture. Even though the book is presented in words, when you step back and think about it, it becomes more like a piece of art. I hope I'm not overselling it. I hope I'm not overselling it, because you may read the book also and have the same reaction, that it just feels so disjointed, and maybe the thing that ties it all together in the end so beautifully for me is not quite as hard-hitting for you. So I don't want to oversell it, but I'm going to say for me it was wonderful, visionary, and a masterpiece. Alright guys, so that is my February reading. It was a wonderful, wonderful reading month. I look forward to many more books for the rest of the year. Let me know if you've read anything really good recently. I love getting your recommendations in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, all of that other wonderful Booktube love and support. I appreciate you guys watching, and I appreciate your ongoing support. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye.